Well, hello, my friends, and welcome back to another episode. Um, Today we're going to do something a little bit different. I am looking forward to heading to a conference later this week. And in that conference, the business group that I'm a part of will be asking ourselves and being asked a lot of questions. And recently I was getting coached in a different setting, and someone asked me what it was that I really wanted. And it was really difficult to answer that question. And in the particular exercise, I wasn't actually being asked to answer the question, only really to consider the question and to see how it felt in my body, which was an interesting experience. I'll just share that. But what I thought would be interesting and hopefully fun today is to ask a series of questions for you to ponder and just play around with what comes up for you. We ask a lot of questions of other people and we get asked questions, but they're not usually really to us, right? They are to us as a professional, but they are not usually deep existential questions for us to really ponder about ourselves. And I hope that this gives us a little opportunity to do so. Um, and I know that for so many of you listening, what we do here seems very conversational. And so I invite you to imagine that you and I are sitting down talking. Imagine that, we're in a quiet, private place. Maybe we're sipping something nice and warm and having a heartfelt conversation back and forth, really trying to get to know each other person to person. So imagine that coziness. Imagine genuine curiosity coming towards you as I ask you these questions. And just let yourself go. Let yourself think out loud. Let yourself spill forth and see what comes up for you. If you are driving, speak it into the car. If you are outside walking, be the weirdo who's talking on their headphones. People will think you're on the phone. It's all right. We see plenty of that, right? Um, if you are doing the dishes or whatever, hopefully you can just let it go. And if you are, having some quiet time, sit down with a journal. I will put a list of these questions in the show notes so that you can come back to them. But my hope is that you will really imagine that I'm asking you these questions and allow yourself the the exercise, the freedom to just spill forth, even if it's not currently being witnessed by another human. Okay. So these are in no particular order. Um, and let's just dive right in. Here we go. What if I didn't need to make any money? What if you didn't need to make any money? Now, here I am talking to physicians. I know that not everyone listening is a physician, but I also know that most of us who are listening work for employment, right? We receive some kind of a paycheck. We could argue all the way up and down about whether or not we are paid the value of what we do, but we give service in exchange for money, most of us. And that is a normal economic interaction. What I'm asking here is if you didn't need money, if you had a perfectly acceptable and fine amount of money for yourself and your family and your loved ones, whatever that you needed, and you got to choose how you spent your time, how would you spend your time? This is assuming that your income is not influenced by what you do to spend your time. And it's interesting to ask ourselves the question, what if I didn't need the money? Now, many of us are in different positions, right? And some people may very desperately need the money that they are earning, and others not. But pondering the question of what if I didn't need the money? What would I choose to do? Right? Just opens our brains up to considering, oh, okay, well, what if these circumstances changed? Would I continue to do this? Would I do it differently? Um, would I do it in a different setting? What would that look like? Would I work less? I'm going to guess that probably no one's going to work more, but we might still choose to continue doing the work that we do. Just asking ourselves the question, right? What if I didn't need the money? What would I do? Next, oh, I'm going to mix it up here. I'm not going to go in the order that I have written it down. What if I couldn't fail? What if I couldn't fail? Right? If I couldn't fail, again, what would I choose to do? So often we are holding ourselves back from things, and that can be any manner of things that we think that we're not qualified for, or we worry that we will look foolish, or that we will fail and lose money, status, whatever it is, right? If you knew you couldn't fail, what would you choose to do? How we answer that question really helps us to get to some of the motivations that we feel, some of the desires that we have. And so there's value in asking ourselves that question. What if I couldn't fail? What would I do? All right, next. What if I chose to love myself more? What if I chose to love myself more? What would I do? If you chose to love yourself more, how would your actions change? How would your decisions change? Right? How would you show up for yourself? How would you take care of yourself day to day and in the big picture? What habits would you need to let go of? What habits would you need to build and incorporate? Right? If you loved yourself the way that you might love your fur babies or your human babies or your partner or maybe your plant babies, right? If you chose to pour that unconditional love that you feel for others into yourself, what would that produce? I think for so many of us, that just feels just absolutely impossible and probably feels a little bit wrong, feels selfish, feels like, oh my gosh, that would be the most horrible, ridiculous thing. I would be an egomaniac. I would be a terrible person. Interesting how quickly we jump into that. And yet, do we think that the people and the pets and the plants that we love so deeply are wrong for accepting the love that we give them? I don't think so, right? And if we chose to shower ourselves with care and attention, the way that we shower those loved ones, what would that produce? Again, we might be having all sorts of ridiculous thoughts and thinking that, but how would your day to day be different if you chose to love yourself more? I know for me, I think that if I chose to love myself more, right, then I would choose to take better care of myself when I'm in a bad mood. We had a little bit of an afternoon. I won't even go there, right? But when I choose to remember that I am a human, that I need care and attention too, right? Including my emotions, right? You're all the better for it. So, what would you do differently if you chose to love yourself more? Would you exercise more? Would you sleep more? Would you eat better? Would you spend more time with people that you loved, right? What would that look like? Let's go on to another question. Um, what would I do? What if I knew when I was going to die? Now, part of my day, not the part I was just referencing, um, was attending a celebration of life for a neighbor who died far too young. And she didn't know that she was going to die. Um, it was it was interesting because her wife, who is a physician, the woman who died was not a physician, but a deeply loving and beloved person. And the surviving wife shared the cause of death, which was cardiovascular disease. She said she had very, very, aggressively narrowed coronaries, and her heart was quite enlarged. Ironically, because people talked so much about what a big heart she had. But it was interesting to reflect as I was sitting there listening to her, really implore people to take good physical care of themselves, which is just an odd thing to hear in a celebration of life. Although, I don't know, it wasn't wrong, it was entirely fitting. But I thought, if we knew when we would die, how would that influence the choices that we made? Now, in the woman that we lost, if she knew that she was going to die as young as she did, I don't know that she would have made any different choice, truly, because she really truly loved people so much and again was very beloved by them, but she died very young. If she could realize that taking care of herself, going back to our last question, that taking care of herself would have allowed everyone that she loved more time with her, I think she would have taken different care of herself, right? And how does that come around to us, right? These two questions can be tied together. That if I chose to love myself more, I might choose to see that me taking care of myself helps to take care of the people that I love because it allows me to be healthier, stronger, more resilient, and a better version of myself than when I'm constantly pouring from an empty cup, right? You at your best self, full cup, full cup on a more frequent basis, right? Rather than running around on fumes all the time as we often do. That that version of you is better. It is better, but we don't see that as choosing to love ourselves more, right? We see that as I need to serve everyone else. Now, if we, and in contrast, like I said, the woman who died was not a physician. She was a very caring person. But I think that for so many of us, we pour so much of ourselves into our work, and we have been taught to do so much into our work. If we knew that we were going to die similarly young to this neighbor that we lost, I don't think that most of us would choose to spend so much time working. I think that more of us would choose to spend more of our time with the people that we love, spending time having moments that mattered. Not to say that we can't have any of that at work. I have had many instances, I think, the nature of being in medicine allows us to be very intimately connected to people in very different times of their lives, births, deaths, illness, major changes, right? We are fortunate humans to be able to witness that in so many people, but there's plenty of other things. Um, If you knew that your life would end prematurely, I don't think that most of us would choose to spend so much time at work, to spend so much time over perfecting things, to spend so much time trying to make people at work happy. I think we would choose, I hope, to spend more time being fully human, loving the people that we love, enjoying spending time with those fur babies and plant babies and whatever that looked like for us. So the question here, what if I knew when I would die, what would I do, is designed to get us thinking, what do I not want to regret? I want to spend more time with the people that I love. I want to spend more time being more fully present and human. This question, right, allows us to think differently. If we knew that we were going to live to be 98, we didn't get to control that, but we did get to control how we take care of our body, which does affect how it looks when we're 98. That's another side of this question, right? If you knew you were going to be very long lived, how would you choose to take care of this body so that it can be as healthy for as long as possible for that long, long life, right? Because that matters too. All right, next question. What if I believed their actions? What if I believed their actions? Now, we can spin this in a few different lights. What if I believed their actions when over and over people say no to my requests and expect me to say yes to theirs? Right? What if I believed their actions? What would I choose to do differently? When I work for a place that constantly removes the support that I have, regardless of the reasons why, promises me that things will get better, but never delivers, right? If I believe their actions, then I need to make a different choice, right? Then we go back to choosing to love myself more and choosing to say what I need is different. Conversely, what if I choose to believe their actions when people show me that they love me, when people show me that they care, that they're willing to help, and I'm quick to brush it aside because I'm so used to living in isolation and being in my silo, right? Because that happens to us too. How often have people around you actually been trying to help, and for whatever reason, you've decided that it's easier to do it on your own, or that you have to do it your way, that they're just going to mess it up, and so you're going to do it. Now, again, this gets complicated because all of those things can happen, and I think we've all been burned in this experience. But if we choose to believe their actions, that they are trying to help, that they are trying to support, even if the end result is that it's not that helpful or supportive, if we choose to believe their actions, that they're trying to show us their care and support, what would we do differently? These questions are just, again, to really open up our brain to other possibilities because it's very easy. And I think it's especially easy right now with so many hard things going on in the world to just feel like the world is getting heavier and heavier and things are closing down on us. And when we take the time to sit and reflect on who we are, on what if these things happen, what if I knew this or I knew that, or I tuned in, or I chose to care or not care, right? We give ourselves the opportunity to have a different experience. All right. What if only my desires mattered? So often when we are making decisions, we are making sure to consider everyone else around me. That might be our family, it might be our patients, it might be the staff, right? All of these other people. I can't tell you how often I've talked to physicians who are considering leaving their position, wanting to make some kind of change, maybe not even leave, but reduce their FTE, right? Which, is going to need to mean that they see fewer patients. And so often get really, really stuck in what will happen to my patients? There is an unpleasant ego question that's wrapped up in there of thinking that we are the only ones, that we are the only solution for our patients. And that's often been reinforced by the patients who said, "You're the only one who's ever listened to me. I don't want to see anybody else. Finally you get me. I never want to not have you as my doctor," right? Some version of that. We get very wrapped up in that story, believing that we are truly the only solution for our patients. And we are not. It is actually a really unhealthy place to be when we believe that that's true. We can believe that we are excellent. We can believe that we are good connectors, that we are good problem solvers, that we are good carers of people. But if we get really stuck in thinking that everyone else's needs matter more than ours, right? And that our desires don't matter. That is a very morally damaging place to be. So let's ask ourselves the question, what if only my desires mattered? What if? And the question here is not about asking you to ignore what other people think or want. I'm asking you, though, if we didn't know what other people think or want, and the only thing we could base our decisions on were what matters to us, what would we decide? If we can think about just removing the external noise and allowing ourselves to consider, what do I want? Right? It's a very powerful question. So, what if only my desires mattered? What would I do? What would I do? All right. I think we have gotten through to the last one. All right. Are you ready? What if I chose to keep it easy? What if I chose to keep it easy? What would I do? This question, I feel, is one that I ask myself often in many different ways. And thankfully, I think I've gotten better and better at asking myself the question again, and it comes out in different words than that. But what if I chose to keep it easy? What if I chose to not let it get complicated? What if I chose to not let it get perfect? Very often, I've shared this example before. I will identify there's something that we do not have in the house. It's usually a food item that is, let's say, somewhat necessary. We've run out of milk. We've run out of this. We've run out of that. And as the person who is, I'm going to say, responsible for gathering most of the things, right, in the world, right, I immediately often will just be like, oh, well, that means I can't do what I was planning to do, and it means I need to go to the store and I need to, right? We get very stuck in these loops and we make it very complicated. And yet sometimes if I think, what would the easy answer be here? And then I can be like, oh, huh, well, it turns out we can do this, this, or this. Okay, yeah, that'll work. What if I chose to keep it easy, right? How can I make this easier is another version of that. It tunes our brain into reflecting on the word easy rather than the opposite, right? Which is the complex, the systematic, the perfect, the I don't know, I was gonna say thoughtful, but that's no, that's not really what we're going for here. Um, what if we choose to keep it easy? What would that look like? So there are going to be complicated decisions that you make, of course. But what if we choose to make it easy? What if we choose to not get stuck? What if we choose to pick something, right? And to run with it rather than doing the mental math over and over and over again when it doesn't make sense. You will not remove all complexity when you get good at answering this question, but you will train your brain to more often reach for the easy solution. And this happens really all the time, right? When we choose to simplify decisions, when we choose to hire someone to help us, when we choose to have a set time that we do our exercise, when we choose to just go with the AI scribe that works the best and call it good, right? When we choose to keep things simple, I would argue that we make it easier to do so, right? That sounds silly, but I invite you to ask yourself this question. What if I choose to keep it easy? All right. So let me run through those questions. Again, I'm not going to go in the order that I went in the first time because that's not how they're written down on my paper. But here they are, the questions from top to bottom again. What if I chose to love myself more? What if I didn't need money? What if I knew when I would die? What if I believed their actions? What if only my desires mattered? What if I couldn't fail? And finally, what if I chose to keep it easy? These are great questions to pull out when you feel like you need to shake things up in your brain, when you feel like you are stuck. Let's talk. So, write these questions down, come back to this episode, say it out loud, let yourself just blab it out, right? Pull up a friend, have this conversation together. Um, Schedule a time for us to talk. I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to help you work through this on your own. That's not true. I would love to work through this with you, not on your own. Oh, it's late, my friends. My friends, that is what I have for you today. I hope that this opens up some insights for you. I hope that you will do the exercise of letting yourself say these things out loud. And I hope it generates some great thoughts for you. Until next week, my friends, take care.